a presentation originally scheduled for my first board meeting on March 19th. The original presentation was longer and included an entry plan as well. This presentation is about Brick Township Public Schools strategically moving forward. We'll define the immediate problem, the S2 funding cliff, and provide a plan, approach. One of my favorite quotes for bringing an organization together with a call to action is from Henry Ford. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress, and working together is success. We need to work together on our course of action in order to remediate some of the S2 funding cliff negative effects on the Brick Township Public Schools budget. Organizational structure provides a framework for communication and a chain of command. Our organizational structure focus needs to be student-centered and teacher-led. I've utilized a toddler's toy we all can visualize to illustrate the Brick Township Public School District's organizational structure hierarchy. If we all remember the toy, the bar that the donuts or rings fit around is what aligns us. That's our parents and our community. At our foundation or our base is our Board of Education, a policy-making body. Next, we have central office administration to implement day-to-day operations and policy, then building level administration, then teachers, then students. If you flip the toy around or flip the diagram around, you'll see there's a bullseye. That's our students. That's our center, student-centered. This way we focus administration and staff on day-to-day operations and students. All student-centered decisions must be implemented with fidelity by fostering buy-in by being teacher-led. This will help focus our delivery of decisions on staff. We do not want to pull resources away from students, but rather push resources up through teachers to our center, students. Let's talk about our immediate problem that we face, the S2 funding cliff. Public education is a right and not a privilege. The concept behind public education to produce productive and responsible citizens in our society. This has been at the foundation of our beginnings as a nation. John Dewey said that education cements the link to democracy, so an educated citizenship is of the utmost importance. An uneducated person is at a disadvantage in our present society. S2 background. The State School Funding Reform Act, SFRA, in New Jersey was created in 2008, never fully funded. School funding revenue comes from a few sources. Federal government aid or grants, although many New Jersey districts receive minimal aid from the federal government, state aid, and local sources primarily raised through property tax levy based on real estate valuations. The majority of New Jersey state public schools realize their funding for their annual school budgets through local property tax levy based on real estate valuation. State aid. Some public school districts receive substantial amount of state aid. State aid is comprised of equalization aid, categorical aid, and specific grants. Equalization aid to a district is calculated as necessary funding to provide a thorough and efficient education adequacy budget. The difference between what the local taxing authority can raise, local fair share, and the adequacy budget is usually covered by the state through equalization aid. Adequacy budget process. The calculation of an adequacy budget begins with establishing a baseline calculation on a cost per pupil basis. Additional weights are added to the cost per pupil calculation, such as for older students, free and reduced lunch program enrollment considered at risk, ELL students, and the percentage of special education students. This weight is multiplied by the cost per pupil baseline and compared to the adequacy budget. Equalization aid. Once we understand the adequacy budget process, the state next looks at how to pay for it. The state calculates how much the local community is responsible for and what they could pay through a tax levy. This is called the local fair share in the state of New Jersey. Once the local fair share is calculated, the state provides the difference in its equalization aid. Thus, equalization aid is the difference between a public school district's adequacy budget and its local fair share. Another way to back into it is that the local fair share is the difference between a district's adequacy budget and equalization aid provided. State aid, principally equalization aid, is distributed based upon the calculation of your adequacy budget. The adequacy budget represents the constitutional mandate for a thorough and efficient education for every New Jersey child. The state must guarantee that financial resources are available in every community to support a district's adequacy budget. How? By providing state aid and requiring districts to contribute their local fair share to make up the difference. The two together equal your adequacy budget. Local fair share is calculated by half equalized property valuations and half income. Senate Bill S2 passed in the summer of 2018. Approximately 200 districts that were originally held harmless saw state funding cuts take effect in 2018. S2 has established a false perception of haves and have-nots, creating an atmosphere that pits students, parents, and communities against each other rather than celebrating or working towards sustaining New Jersey's recent #1 ranking for providing a stellar public education to every child. Fair funding for all public school children, but not by robbing Peter to pay Paul. The funding formula on which S2 is based is more than 10 years old. Education has evolved a great deal in the past decade, and the formula does not reflect that evolution and the true cost to educate children in 2020. Special education costs in the formula are not actual, but rather census-based. Our total budget only went up 9% over 12 years, as state aid decreased 30% over those same 12 years. Equalized valuation of the real estate in each town. This number reflects the respective wealth of the community via the total fair market value of all real estate. It is the combined assessments for each individual parcel of real estate on the tax roll, adjusted by a percent either up or down to reflect market conditions that particular year. The equalization value in the township was approximately $13 billion in 2009 and has presently recovered to $11 billion post-Hurricane Sandy, a 12% decrease. Yet our formula wealth factor increased our local fair share, as dictated by the state by the S2 funding formula. How does this compute? Our total budget went up 9% over 12 years, or less than 1% per year, and below the cap. Yet our state aid decreased 30% over those same 12 years. Some more data. A property tax comparison. Another problem with S2 is that the state expects the amount lost in state aid to be made up in a property tax levy increase, which is not feasible with the tax levy cap. Our approach. What is our plan? We will continue to have meetings to garner support and solicit guidance. We have recently gone out with a competitive contract bid for a comprehensive feasibility study and strategic plan. This study will have 4 parts: a demographic study, facilities repurposing, possible redistricting, future budget analysis and cash flow analysis, as well, and finally, a 3- and 5-year strategic plan to guide us under the auspice of S2. We have recently gone out with a competitive contract bid for a comprehensive feasibility study and strategic plan. This study will have 4 parts: a demographic study, facilities repurposing, possible redistricting, detailed audit and budget analysis, and finally a 3- and 5-year strategic plan to guide us under S2. This study will also encompass surveys and focus group meetings with all stakeholders. Data and information gathered should include current to potential enrollments, as well as current to potential FTE to student ratios by building and department. We hope to award this bid sometime in the near future. Where do we go from here? We have already started on step 1. We have started with conducting meetings to garner support and create one message. We will continue with the communications plan, sharing our message to all stakeholders. Step 2, we need to understand the state formula utilized, and to do this, we need the New Jersey Department of Education to release the formula. Many of you are aware of an Oprah request campaign supported by Save Our Schools, or SOS, to ask for the formula. This campaign has not yielded any results thus far. Next is to persuade the Department of Education to adjust the formula to reflect present wealth factor, post-Sandy. Convince the New Jersey Department of Education that the formula as it stands does not work for brick because it shows brick as wealthy. Also, we need to try to convince legislators that state aid losses should not exceed amounts to be raised through local taxation. Step 3, request the DOE to increase the S2 term of repayment, reparations, and encourage the state legislator to fully fund extraordinary aid, which could go a long way in helping with our special education costs. Lastly, step 4, utilize results from our comprehensive feasibility study and strategic plan to move brick forward with the fiscal restraints known at this time in a manner that is best interest of our students, student-centered, while taking into consideration concerns and recommendations of all stakeholders.